recording tonight's event. But don't worry, only those of us who are presenting and unmuted will be recorded for posterity on YouTube. So for that reason, at any time tonight, please type any questions you have for our authors in the chat, and Rachel and I will get to them as we're introducing our authors. And finally, it's great to welcome you to our second Northshire Live event for the new year. We appreciate all your support during the holidays, and thank you so much. Rachel, you get to the interesting stuff.
Yes, I am the lucky one who gets to introduce our guest authors this evening and ask them lots of my questions, though, as David said, please chime in at any point with any of your questions, just put them in the chat and we will happily post them for you. So I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order. They are three terrific authors of cozy mysteries. First of all, we have USA Today bestselling author Catherine Bruns. She is the author of more than 15 mystery novels, plus several novellas. Her many wonderful series include the Cookies and Chance series and the Cindy York mysteries. And she's here tonight to talk about The Enemy You Gnocchi, the third book in her Italian chef mysteries. Lynne Cahoon is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of the Kitchen Witch mysteries, Cat Latimer mystery series, the Tourist Trap mysteries, and the Farm to Fork series. She's with us tonight to talk about Two Wicked Desserts, the second Kitchen Witch mystery. And Amita Murray is joining us tonight from London. Her first novel, The Trouble with Rose, was published by HarperCollins in 2019. Her short fiction won the S.I. Leeds Literary Prize and has appeared in Wasafiri, Sand, Berlin, the Berkeley Fiction Review, and others. She's here with us tonight to talk about the first in a new series, the mystery Arya Winters and the Tiramisu of Death. Please join me in welcoming them all to our scenes this evening. And I would love it if the three of you could start things off tonight by telling us a little bit about the book and series you're here to talk about tonight, just sort of positioning it for our audience who might not be familiar with your work. Catherine, do you want to go first since alphabetically you're first, or do you want to defer to one of the other ladies?
Well, I don't know if Lynn wants to go. I just need to grab my book. So
okay, so yeah, let's have Lynn go first, and then Amita, and then Catherine, you can be last.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, I'm Lynne Cahoon. I am a cozy mystery author of 4, maybe 5 series coming up. I have a new one releasing this year, so it's the Survivors Book Club series that's focused on cancer survivors, which I'm one of. So that's one of the reasons that I decided to do that series. It's a little serious, but a lot of fun, of course, because you know cancer can be fun. Today I'm here to talk about my Kitchen Witch series. It started with a novella, but then it really went out with One Poison Pie. And Mia is my amateur sleuth in this book. She is a kitchen witch, which for her and her grandmother, they define it as someone who spells for peace, you know. They work on spells as far as in the kitchen and spells to like spraying the fix a sprain or those type of health things that you used to see with the village person, you know, who always knew the right herb to give someone like she was pregnant or those type of things. And that's kind of where the Kitchen Witch heritage came out of, at least for me, for this writing. Mia is a caterer, so it's all about the food, because with Lynn, it's all about the food. That's one thing you'll find in all of my books. We talk a lot about food. But she's a caterer that was working in Boise, which is in Idaho. It's where I'm from. I'm currently living in St. Louis, but I spent most of my life in Boise or in the Boise area. So a couple of my series are set there. And she breaks up with a very bad boyfriend or / almost fiance and moves back home to Magic Springs, which is right near Sun Valley, if you know of where all of the celebrities used to go up to ski, you know, from California. So, and Sun Valley is gorgeous. It's just beautiful. It's just magical because it's set in that mountainous area. And that's what I wanted Magic Springs to feel like. But of course, having Sun Valley there has consequences to the other little towns that are around it. So Mia buys this old schoolhouse that was abandoned, and she comes to find out that it was a magical schoolhouse, because in Magic Springs, there's a ongoing coven. So there's a coven who's out, and people actually say they're with the coven, but the people who aren't magical, they just think it's a group of people that get together. So in Two Wicked Desserts, she is doing a catering situation, and she's got her grandmother there who's trying to teach her the magical spells, and she's trying to solve a murder, and she's got her cat who her grandmother accidentally put her dead boyfriend's soul into. So this cat's doing weird things, like he opens up the doors for himself, and he gets his own treats, and he's just being a little hoop, Mr. Darcy is. So and she can't decide if it's Dorian or if it's Mr. Darcy being a pain in the butt. But Two Wicked Desserts came out last year, and in April, the third in the series, which is Three Tainted Teas, which is all about when Mia caters a magical wedding, which was really, really fun, because you could do all this neat stuff with the magical wedding, and there's werewolves. So not only do we have magic in Idaho and a coven in Idaho, we have werewolves in Idaho because they came over from Wisconsin. So that's my series.
Sounds terrific. And in just a second, I will drop a pre-order link in the chat for Three Tainted Teas for when that comes out in April.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, of course. So Amita, why don't you go next and tell us about your book?
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Lynn. That sounds amazing. I want to do magic cakes as well. Okay, so my series, Arya Winters, and the first of that series, Arya Winters and the Tiramisu of Death, came out a couple of months ago, and it has. I actually, when I was writing it, I have to say, I didn't realize that there'd be controversial things in it. I didn't realize that some of the things I was doing are controversial, and now I'm realizing, because it's triggering those kinds of conversations. So I'll tell you in what ways this is a cozy kind of villagey mystery, and in what ways it isn't. So the ways that, there's some things that Lynn said that are true about my book too. So there's cake, there's lots of cake. That's always good for a cozy mystery. There's cats. So, there's two cats, in fact. So that's always good. It's a little village. It's called Trucklewood. It's made up, unfortunately, though it sounds quite cool. There's a frozen yogurt shop, frozen yogurt, not frozen yogurt, frozen custard rather. Frozen custard shop on the high street. There's all these nosy neighbors. And there's what I think is the most interesting thing to me about these sort of cozy villagey mysteries, Agatha Christie type mysteries, is that there's emotional motivation or psychological motivation to the crime. So if you ask me to write about, assassins and spies and drug cartels, I'm no good at that. What I do is the psychological motivation. Why is someone the way they are? Why would you take that kind of step? What insecurities or vulnerabilities is your motive coming from? So I think about those kinds of things, so in that sense, it certainly is a sort of cozy mystery. Arya is not a detective; she's a amateur detective. So she's in this situation because someone she cared for died. And another death happens now, a second death, and she starts making connections with her auntie's death and starts to wonder what is going on. The two deaths, the thing that links them in her mind is that both people were quite lonely, but lonely in different ways. So her auntie was lonely in a way where she'd be really polite and friendly with everyone in trying to be friends with people, but it wouldn't necessarily win her more belonging or more friendship, because she's, when you're existentially lonely, do you know what I mean? When you just kind of feel like sort of you're the outsider, and I think her auntie felt like that. So she was lonely in that way, but the other death, Tobias, who's a friend of Arya's, who she saw as a friend, is lonely in a different way. He's lonely. He more obviously pushes people away. You know, he's blunt. He was rude. More obviously push people away. But Arya makes that connection that they were both lonely, and she starts to wonder if someone's kind of preying on people in this community that experience that kind of sort of existential loneliness that you can't do very much about. So that's the kind of the premise of it. But then the controversial stuff, I think, which I didn't realize that you're not meant to swear in cozy mysteries, and you're not meant to have sex in cozy mysteries, and I'm doing both. So yeah, that's what I'd say. To me, I'm bringing sort of a bit of a Fleabag twist, millennial concerns of loneliness and social anxiety and how we push people away even when we want to be closer to them, relationships, getting love wrong, getting sex wrong, getting them both mixed up, all of that stuff to me is quite important. And so I bring that into the kind of the villagey, claustrophobic, nosy neighbors, lots of cake, cats, that kind of mystery. So some bits of it tick the boxes a bit easier than the other bits, but yeah, I mean, she's quite close to my heart, Arya. She's taken a life of her own. She does her own thing. She says her own stuff. Sometimes she shocks me when she says stuff to people, because she can be quite blunt and rude, and I just think, oh wow, that's quite something to say. I would just rather write a strongly worded email and not have to say things to people's faces, but she does. So I do appreciate that about her, that she's very real, whether you like it or not. Okay, yeah, so that's me. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'm shocked.
Not swearing.
Where's my pearls? I'll grab my pearls.
Catherine, would you like to go next and tell us about the Italian Chef series?
Yes, I'd love to. So to start off with, my name is Catherine Bruns. I live in upstate New York, and most of my series have been set so far in New York, except for one that is set in Hawaii. And I have a new series coming out next October, which is set in Vermont. But my most recent book in the Italian Chef series is The Enemy You Gnocchi. It's book number 3, a Christmas cozy. It came out at the end of October. Real quick about the series, that's a little background. Book 1 is Penne Dreadful. Book 2, It Can Only Be Murder. You see, we're using as much of puns as we can, obviously, as cozy mysteries go. So the main character, Tessa Esposito, is a Italian chef. She lives in upstate New York. And a little background on the first book, without giving any spoilers. It starts out when her husband has just died. She's a new widow. And she discovers that her husband's death, he died in a car crash, but she finds out that he actually did not die accidentally, he was murdered. So in the first book, she goes to set about finding out who might have killed him. Her longtime dream is to have opened an Italian restaurant. She's a fabulous chef. Her husband was going to help her. It was their lifelong dream. Book number 2, she obviously does get her restaurant, and in It Can Only Be Murder, she's catering an event for her cousin who owns a bookstore. And in that book, someone dies who Gabby, her cousin, has a confrontation with. And that leads us to, I'm trying not to give any spoilers. And book 3 is The Enemy You Gnocchi. And this is a Christmas cozy. It takes place 14 months after Tessa's husband has died. And she really wants to enjoy this Christmas. The last Christmas, of course, was right after her husband died. And she really just wants to try and have a good holiday and throw herself back to everything. So she starts making all these cookies for the local event, the Festival of Lights. If you live in upstate New York, like Rachel does, you know that there is a Lights in the Park in Albany, New York. So I kind of stole it from there a little bit. They have people go through and see all the lights displays. They're very beautiful. And Tessa has volunteered because she's so kind-hearted to make the Christmas cookies for the festival. So she's, I don't know, no big deal. I'll make 1,000 or 2,000 cookies. You know, hey, I've got the time to spare, right? I'm only running a restaurant. It's no big deal. And she also finds time to investigate a murder because the gentleman who has decided to play Santa for the Festival of Lights, he's kind of new in town. His name is Mario Russo. He has a way of rubbing everyone the wrong way in town. Other business owners, he's like intruding on everybody. He's got a new coffee shop, and Tessa has a good friend, Archie, who owns the main shop, Java Time, in town. And Mario is intent on putting him out of business, and really there isn't anyone who likes him. He also is after any woman under the age of 60 basically in town, so he's kind of a cad. And on the first night of the festival, excuse me, Mario is found outside stabbed. So in a Santa suit, by the way, so to make things worse. Don't worry, no children were involved, no children saw, so no one knew. And Tessa, the main suspect is Archie. Of course, he has the motives. Some items of his were found near Mario, so Tessa sets out to prove that Archie is not guilty, and of course gets herself in danger as well. It ends kind of sweet without any spoilers. It's I don't know, I like to think of it as like a Hallmark movie ending, but that's really the main thing. Tessa is you know, very kind soul. She'd feed the entire world if she could. Her passion is cooking. She has a cat as well. That's Luigi on the cover, and she there is cake, cannoli, you know, basically anything you think of, lots of recipes in it. And since my father was born in Sicily, I kind of like to consider the series a tribute to him, without the murder, of course, but and that's about it.
Lovely, thank you, Lynn. We did just get our first audience question in the chat from Stephanie, wanting to know from all of you, Amita, this will be relevant sort of later on in your career, but whether your books can be read out of order. So any of you chime in whatever order you three want to go.
Yes, mine can. They're all standalones.
I would say mine could. I don't think you get the full picture of the series that way, though. I am a big JD Robb fan, and I read her series, and at first I just grabbed whatever I could because I was doing audiobooks and driving back and forth to work. But then I actually read the series from book one and reread everything that I had read in between. So I found the things that I was missing, and I think it adds to the depth of, you know, the series to be able to do it in series order. But you read them any way you want to, because it's all about you.
Mine, of course, is the first one at the moment, so it doesn't matter. But I think so. Each has a separate mystery, of course. Each book in the series, I've written 3 so far, so all 3 of them have a separate, completely separate mystery. So you can read them out of order in that sense. But there is also a love interest in Arya's life that you know. So it would be useful to know, I suppose, how, you know, what's gone on for them in each book. But again, each subsequent book recaps a little bit of that. A great love interest. I really like him. I like, you know, when you make a love interest, you can make them whatever you like. They're always really attentive and really cool and really sexy. So, you know, so he's there as well. But so that's the slight through line in the first 3 books. But the mysteries are all separate.
I think with one of my series, the Kat Latimer ones, I did what Catherine did, where I had a dead ex-husband, and at first he was this jerk ex-husband that left her the house for some reason. She didn't know why, but she was glad she got the house, and he was dead. And so, sorry, my husband's phone, not mine. And then the next book, you learn a little bit more about that murder. And then the next book, you learn, you know, actually who killed him. But in each book, there was a separate murder as well. So for that series, you really had to start at book 1 and read book 1, 2, 3 at least to get that ongoing arc to go. But usually it's like what you were saying, where it's more the just the relationships that change, you know, while you're writing these, and you want them to be a little more you can't stay the same in a book, or a character can't stay the same in each book. So they do change, their relationships change, and who they are changes a little bit too.
I agree with Lynn. I mean, the main character of 2 has to progress through all the books in the series. Otherwise, she or he becomes dull and stagnant. I think, anyway, they have to mature. I mean, in Tessa's situation, I mean, yeah, you could read them separately, but I mean, it might be nice to get the full effect from the beginning to see how she was when her husband died and how she's matured throughout it. But I mean, if it was Christmas time and you're just in the mood for a Christmas cozy, I would say, yeah, pick up that one out of order. But I mean, yeah, they do. I don't want to say that there is a phrase in Cozy Mystery, and might be another series too, TSTL, too stupid to live. And I mean, there are some characters that start out like in the first book. I mean, oh, the murderer's downstairs, you know, oh, well, let me go downstairs and see if I can find, I mean, not that my characters or anything like that, but just to give you an example, a lot of them, I have another series where the character starts out, my Cookies and Chance series, where she starts out a little timid, and she's basically new at sleuthing, obviously, and she makes some mistakes in the first book, but she finds her ways. And now I'm up to I'm actually writing the 12th book in that series, so they do have to have there has to be change and some depth to them, and to help the series along. That's my feeling.
An arc, yeah,
There's
I
a
agree with
comment.
both of you. Yeah, absolutely. There has to be change, and I think it's interesting for us as well, because you know, as people, we of course we do change, but then we have these sort of stops and starts in our personal growth, don't we? We sort of think, oh wait, this is moving forward, this thing I have, whatever anxiety, insecurity, whatever pattern, this is moving forward, and then oh no, it isn't, I'm right back where I was, you know. So we go in stops and starts, and Arya does as well. So in this first book, you know, one of the things there is quite a lot of childhood stuff still going on for her. Her parents kind of left her with her auntie when she was really little. She has loads of social anxiety. She's very high anxiety, and she tends to keep people at a distance in the first book, but then almost sort of against her will in the second and third, there will be a, you know, she will evolve as she grows, and kind of, you know, we'll see how she learns. She sometimes, you know, again, there's progress and then there's steps back, just like in real life. So she's like that as well. But yes, like Lynn and Catherine, you know, the arc of the character keeps on growing. And so it's quite interesting to see, you know, where they were and what, in fact, the events of each book, the way those events then help them change as a person and grow as a person.
That actually relates to a question I was going to ask specifically Lynn and Catherine much later in the evening, but both of you have multiple series going on, sort of that you're writing at the same time. And if you're developing a character arc across each of those multiple series, how do you keep it all straight?
Lynn?
Okay. Well, for me, it's, and I've said this with Tourist Trap, I'm writing, I just finished 14 and I'm editing 14 right now because she just sent it to me. Because I'm so far into the series, when I go in to write, when I go to sit down and I list out who's going to be players in this book, of the group and what kind of new business is going to show up in South Cove, it's like I'm visiting old friends. It's like we're sitting down around a table and it's like, okay, you were in the last book, you can't be in this book, but you can, and you haven't been in a book for a while, and let's do this. I have less trouble moving from one series to another and setting up and resetting myself into that series than I do when I'm writing the future book and editing the book that just came. I've had trouble with that where I'll be editing and it's like, oh, well, didn't that just happen? And it wasn't that in the other book. And, you know, and then I lose my timeline and then I'm all crazy and I can't edit and write in the same series. But each series has a different feel. I mean, they have different characters, obviously, unless you do crossovers. And I've done crossovers before and that's really fun. But each one of them has a different feel, like this Survivors Club book club that I'm writing. It's a little more serious. It's a little more introspective. You know, she's not Jill, the bookseller in Tourist Trap, but she does run a bookstore, but it's a total different bookstore. And the way she deals with things is totally different. Where Jill would rather sit and read all day, you know. Rarity, she isn't that kind of person. She likes to get things done and she's very active and, you know, hiking and all of that. And it's just getting, I guess, just figuring out where you're setting, what table you're setting at. Are you setting at the Tourist Trap table? Are you setting at the Kitchen Witch table? Are you setting at the Survivors Club table? Which makes me sound like an idiot or very crazed.
I agree with Lynn. So mine, yeah, I have 5 series. Lynn probably has more than me. I mean, I don't know how Lynn writes all the books that she does. It's like, oh my God, she's got another one coming out. It's like, how does she do this? So, but I have the Cookies and Chance. I have the Cindy York mysteries. The Aloha Lagoon was a multiple author series that I contributed 2 books to. So that was kind of like one where the storyline was already set for us. It all takes place in Hawaii. We each had a character and we had characters from other series visiting in our book. We had to write them in and then check with the other authors to make sure that we displayed their character right, so to speak. The Italian chef, and then I have my maple syrup mysteries coming up next year, or this year, excuse me. So with mine, the main characters all have very different situations. I mean, for example, Tessa is newly widowed. You have Cindy York, who is a working mom in her mid-40s, which is rare to see a cozy character that's over 30, usually in most cases. Publishers don't seem to like them older for some reason. And she is married with kids and trying, her goal in life is to like sell $1 million house and be on, well, not be on easy street, but, you know, make a decent living, so to speak. And everything seems to, well, not work out for her. There's a murder and then, you know, the sale goes down the drain, so to speak, that sort of thing. And then we have the Cookies and Chance, where my main character, that's a culinary series as well. She owns a bakery. She's newly divorced. So for me, it helps to have them all in different situations: divorced, widowed, Cindy's a mom, middle-aged. The Aloha Lagoon series with Carrie in Hawaii had her running away from a bad home life, taking a job as a waitress. And of course, she's never waitressed before in her life. And then my new series actually is kind of more diverse. And the main character comes home to run her father's maple syrup farm after he dies. Of course, he's murdered, but they don't know it at the time. And she comes home to take it over and is met with all kinds of difficulty trying to learn the business and make a go of it. And she's got a brother who's like the main suspect in the murder. So all different situations for the main characters, which for me helps me to distinguish between them. So
yeah, I mean, can I add as well, Rachel? Obviously this is the first series like this, but I'm working on sort of 2 other things at the same time. And I think a couple of things that slightly connect with what Catherine and Lynn were saying too, but I think one is my process. So the thing that I've now started doing, which I've got much better at, is when I finish a draft of something and I'm sort of happy with where the draft is, I just kind of leave it and then go on to the next thing, which means that I will then, when I have to come back to that series, that first series, I will read that draft again and give it a good edit so that I'm now caught up with everything that the character has recently experienced before I start writing the next. So that really helps. So the process helps. The other thing that helps is, again, the distinctions between the series. So the other one I'm working on, I'm not even sure it's going to be, it is still, it's got a sort of a Knives Out kind of feel to it. So I don't know, is that still a cozy? I'm not sure. But it's got, I think, in the last couple of years since I started working on the Arya Winters stuff, I feel like so much world stuff has happened, Me Too and BLM and of course the epidemic and all of the stuff that so many of us have gone through. So a lot of that kind of comes into that other series, the new series. So it's got more of a world, not it's not global in its reach at all. It's still, set in smaller places, but the darkness that we have all gone through in the last couple of years, I think, impinges on that series a bit more. So there is when I go to it, my mindset is quite different from my Arya Winters mindset. So that really helps. And if the main character, the voice in which they narrate what's happening is different enough and real enough to you, then automatically the details don't get so tangled, and what happened to whom. But yeah, it's great fun. I like the kind of being able to travel between series because it does give you the space from each thing, and then you can come back to it in quite a fresh way. So I do like that.
That's so interesting. Thank you all. There was a comment earlier from our Lynn from Rochester saying that she's just beginning to get acquainted with cozy mysteries. And that actually leads to a question that I had, which is, I'd love it if you could each discuss exactly what you think a cozy mystery is, especially for readers who are here who maybe aren't cozy mystery readers, and then what some of the rules are. Amita, you mentioned that you've broken some rules. So I'd love to hear about, what's a cozy, what are the rules, and maybe which rules do you like and which rules would you be just as happy to throw out the window if you haven't already done so. Amita, do you want to tackle this one first, since you already sort of alluded to it a little bit?
Yeah, it's such a pet peeve of mine, though. I might go off on a rant that might take hours. I just, I find that a lot of crime fiction, and I don't mean particularly cozy crime, I think a lot of crime fiction deals with sex as if it's a terrible thing. It's non-consensual, it's grim, there are terrible situations that it leads us into. And I get that. Of course, those stories are really important to tell, but I don't want them to be exclusively the only stories that we read in commercial fiction. I want the stuff about sex that is fun. I want the stuff that's that with the times where we get it wrong, where it's awkward, or we do it just because, it's better than not doing it, even though it's not very good. Arya has this thing with her ex-boyfriend Craig, who's a character in this book too, where she says, he was a bit boring and the sex was a bit average, but at least it was sex. So she's very blunt about those things. So I want those stories, the stories about sort of real messy relationships and loneliness and what it makes us do and how much we want to belong and want to be loved, and yet find it so hard to, we keep on doing things that actually prevent us from getting the things we need. So those are really important concerns for me, and it distresses me that we keep on reading just about horrific kind of manipulative, controlling sex and love and desire, instead of the kind of the fun and the real kind of messy, awkward, lonely, fun side of things. So yeah, that's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. To tell you the truth, when I started writing on the Arya Winters stories, I was just picking things that I love writing and reading, and part of it is the psychological motivation in sort of a villagey mystery. Part of it is baking, but another part of it is the kind of the fun, sexy romantic side of things. So I was just picking those things and kind of, they came together for me without thinking too much about what genre it belonged to. So I, of course, broke rules of genre because I wasn't necessarily writing to a particular genre. But cozy mystery, it's got that feeling of the sort of the kind of the Agatha Christie, type story with a few named characters whose motivations we know, all of whom could potentially have done it. And so you have to then figure out slowly, this one could have done it, and you have red herrings and you think, okay, maybe it was that one. And then it turns out it wasn't, of course, because it's too early in the game to, for us to find out, and you learn how the world of that mystery works. So to me, that's what a villagey mystery is, but then added with the kind of the millennial Fleabag thing that I didn't know that I was doing, but apparently I am.
That's fun. I think what I've always looked at is the issue of the traditional cozy, and I think maybe there's a difference between a traditional mystery and a cozy mystery, where a traditional mystery more Agatha Christie can be a little harder, whereas a cozy mystery is a little softer, a little more community based, a little more about the crazy uncle that's in your, that's sitting on your porch. But I love the fact that we're talking about pushing the boundaries of that. When I did the Kat Latimer mysteries, she's an author, and she opens up, she's the one that gets the house in the when her husband dies. She's an author, and she opens up a writer's retreat in it. I wanted it to have a little bit of romance because I was writing romance at the time too. And so I did add in maybe more feeling between her and Seth, and it the reviews as far as that were not pretty because I was lustful, and it's not something that someone who loves traditional cozies is willing to step into the next generation and do. I've heard millennial cozies talked about, maybe they're a little bit more open, a little bit more able to have more of a relationship as far as sexual. But for me, the definition of the cozy mystery was always amateur sleuth, small town, and really more about, and you said, and Marita said this, really more about the relationships and why, the motivation behind the killing. Oh my goodness. Stop. Apparently I'm not good at turning that down.
Lynn, is that Benny Hill theme? That sounds like the Benny
yes,
Hill theme.
Yes, please. That's my husband's ringer. I'm gonna throw it down the stairs.
I love it.
But having that motivation, for me, it's not so much. In fact, I have a hard time figuring out how somebody died in my books because I don't care. They're dead. And I want to know why they're dead, who killed them, why that person would want to do that kind of thing, and what's going on with that kind of stuff. So I have to really step back about in the middle of the book and think, did I say she was shot, or was she stabbed, or was she poisoned, or what, and figure out that. So that's part of my cleanup. I come back and do later after my first draft is done. But the motivation, that's what I'm interested in. Why people are out why are there people out there who think it's okay to take somebody else's life? And if we can make him a bad guy and funny and teach people that that's not okay in that whole process, the more the merrier.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, cozy mysteries, it's kind of like you feel like there's a lesson to be learned or so when you're reading one or when you're done. For me, I've always gone along with the no sex, no no swearing, no on stage graphic murder. Those I thought are the three key rules to what is a cozy mystery. Also, I learned very quickly with my first book that you should not have cliffhangers, because people don't like that and they will tell you in their reviews. So I learned quickly to stay away from that. And I wanted, when I was querying the Italian chef mysteries, I found an agent, and I had originally written it as more of a suspense. Now I wanted to write a suspense novel, and my agent said, I think this would do better if you rewrote it as a cozy. So I said, okay. And I can't even tell you all the changes I had to make to the book. And there were still a couple, I think, that might have gotten under the wire. So I do like to push the envelope. She put me through a couple of rounds of edits with that before we queried it. And there were still some instances where at the last minute, she's like, whoa, you got I had the main character like killing the bad guy. This isn't a spoiler because it totally changed, but and she's like, oh, no, we do not do that in cozies. So it's like, okay. So there are certain rules, and then other certain rules that you learn that even if your agent is okay with it, maybe the publisher is not going to go for it. So just like I said, how they usually like young heroines for the case. I mean, there can be male heroine, a male main character. I know there are a couple out there, but there aren't many. So usually it's a young woman. Usually she's divorced or coming out of a bad relationship. So I do feel like I try to push the envelope sometimes. Not so much with the graphic murder. Once in a while, I would let a swear word slip in, like a H word or a D word, and then my agent's like, no, those have to go. So, and the one thing for me that was never a problem was the sex in the novel, because one time before I started writing cozies, I queried a romance novella to, what's the name? I think it's Kensington's imprint. Lynn, was Entangled. Is that one of theirs? I think.
No,
Entangled isn't one of theirs. Okay, I don't remember who's. And the woman wrote back, and she was interested in it, but she said, "You need to make the sex scene more graphic," and that's when it lost me. I just, I was like, okay, this isn't happening. So I sent her some kind of revision, and it was like, well, thank you anyway. But so
Can I talk to her? I'm just saying.
What's that?
Yeah.
Could I talk to her? She seems like she might like my stuff.
This was years ago. I don't even remember her name, to tell you the truth, but they do like graphic ones, so you should try them.
It's actually lovely to see that there can be such a range of sort of author comfort level, of reader comfort level, that sort of like, you know, everyone wants to write different things and every reader wants to read different things. And it's lovely that there is sort of this, you know, the book that is too tame for one reader is too hot for another reader. And, you know, everyone has their comfort level. And that's a great thing. I would love to talk about food. And not just because it's closing in on 7 o'clock where I am and I'm thinking about food. You all write food so beautifully, and I'd love if you could talk a little bit about why you wanted to write books that centered around food, and what some of the fun foods to talk about were for each of you.
I think I'll go because it sounds like I'm quiet right now. They're probably all spam calls anyway. I love food. It's my comfort level. It's my go-to comfort place. And I think that feeling of home, that feeling of being part of a group is always better when you're sitting around a table. For me, it's my mom's, Sunday dinner table, and she was, a country cook. She had fried chicken and mashed potatoes and corn and salad and ranch dressing that we made that wasn't, from the bottle, and, a cake and a pie, and that's where everyone got together. So when I started writing, I couldn't see writing a scene without having some food in it somewhere. They do eventually do other things, but it just seemed like that would be part of the process. And it's something with the cozy genre that I find my readers like as well. So, I always have a small restaurant that they always go to, and we talk about the restaurant a lot, and the things that are in it, and the food that the recipes I put in are recipes that are either from my childhood or recipes I found that I use, in my family or in my small family now. It's just me and my husband now. So when I'm baking, it's like, it's way too much food. But for me, the food is something that brings people together. And we talked a little bit earlier about what a rough couple of years it's been. And even in this rough couple of years, people started baking. People started making sourdough, and sharing recipes. And it's like we went back to the food. We went back to the thing that sustains us. So for me, that food sustains me. So, and my characters.
That's lovely. I was going to say there's a line in the book where Arya says, people ask me, you're a baker, doesn't it make you want to eat cake all the time? And she answers, like, doesn't everyone want to eat cake all the time anyway? So I think cake is important. It's an important thing, and chocolate cake is important. I think a couple of reasons. So one was I don't know enough about actual police work to have made my main character a policewoman or a detective. I didn't want to do that. I wanted her to be an amateur who gets things wrong when she's trying to figure out what happened, in a particular case. I didn't necessarily want to be making bloopers all the time, by making her a policewoman and then her getting everything wrong all the time. So that was one reason I wanted her to be something else. But then I do love baking. I'm not as accomplished as Arya. She's very creative in what she makes her cakes look like, and I'm more of a put that much flour in and put that much. I'm much more of an instinctive baker, and I tend to. When people ask me for recipes, I'll just be like, well, put a bit of flour in, and then put a bit of this in, and that is. So I'm not I'm not as meticulous and detailed as Arya can be about her creations, but I love it. I love doing it, and I think it was, you need because of all the murder that goes on in mysteries, you need something a bit more sensory, a bit more pleasant, a bit more pleasurable to kind of counterbalance that. And I felt like, if she had this kind of environment of cake ingredients and baking equipment, and that to me is a good sort of counterbalance. And it was something I knew enough about that I could write it without too much you want to research the things that interest you. So I have a weird, I think all writers do, but have a really weird bookshelf of like 5 books on one topic, and then 5 on witches, and 5 on cakes, and 5 on I don't know, different kinds of ferns. Who knows, 5 on planets or something, so as I hop between the different interests in different books. But baking is one that I do anyway, so I can pretty much I can pull off making Arya a baker. That's why, for me, that's why she's a baker.
When I first wrote my first book, Tastes Like Murder, the first book in Cookies and Chance, this was back in 2014. I wanted to be published, and I knew that culinary cozies were popular. Their popularity is still stayed, and there was a time, I think, where my agent said, no, culinaries, they're not looking for culinaries now, but I think that's back now, because I see tons every month that are being published. So for me, in the beginning, it was because I thought that it was a theme I could handle, tackle. The main character in the Cookies and Chia series owned a bakery. I could bake. As far as cooking, I'm okay, but I like to bake and I'm somewhat decent at it. Have a lot of good family recipes, which I could use, a lot of friends that are excellent bakers. So I thought that would be a good start with it. But now 4 of my 5 series all have some culinary angle to them, and they all have recipes in them from friends or from family. And I thought as I went along how great it would be to encompass my my family's history. My father's Italian. He was born in Sicily, and my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was born in Lebanon. So that's where it comes in the maple syrup mysteries. And I thought these are recipes, that should not be wasted. They should be shared with everyone. So it took on more of a personal note for me. And I really enjoy doing them.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I'm getting hungry. We are just about out of time, so I'm going to ask one last audience question that got direct message to me anonymously, so I'm going to share it anonymously. As the audience member says, I absolutely adore the silly, often punny titles that Cozy Mysteries have. What's it like coming up with your titles?
I can start if that's okay. I've come up with all of them for all of my books except for the Italian chef mysteries. Those my editor came up with those, but it's really not so bad. You have to think of a way to entwine the culinary aspect with the murder aspect. Like I have Tastes Like Murder. I have Baked to Death. I have, what's another one? Crumbled to Pieces is another one. So something that's going to give an ominous note to it, while also sharing the food angle. And it's fun. I mean, the ones to come up with, and the books are full of puns too at times. So I enjoy it.
I've got so Tiramisu of Death, then the second one is Deadly Cupcakes, and then the third one is Killer Ganache. And the funny thing is, in the first one, in the tiramisu one, that it is the tiramisu that is poisoned, and that that's how Tobias dies, because it's a birthday present from him, from Arya. Of course, she's not the one that put poison in it. But then now I can't have that in every book, so I can't poison all her cakes, because then she'd go out of business, so that won't be good. But then you have to sort of insert ways where the cake is somehow implicated or in the same situation as where the murder takes place, so it's I do kind of now that I've done it in the first book, I kind of have to do it every single time. But yeah, I mean, I write humor, I even though they're murder mysteries, comedy is my go-to way of writing, and characters and dialogue always do funny things for me, because if I try and write really sort of more serious books or gothic books, which I like reading, I'm no good at it, because my comedy just keeps on kind of trying to come through. So to me, that kind of the puns and the double meanings, or the humor, is that element is sort of equally important to the food and the mystery, and I can't sort of leave it out really, even if I try.
See, I have a counterpoint on all of that. Is some of my books, the title comes. I know exactly what the title is going to be from day one. It's going to be this. Other times it's horrendous. It's just I cannot title this book, and I don't know what the difference is. It shouldn't be this hard at times, but sometimes I just get that mental block of what the title should be. for the Kitchen Witch series, which is what we came to talk about, or what I came to talk about, we decided to do the 1, 2, 3, 4 thing, or 5, 6 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because there'll be 6 in this. I just signed a new contract on it. So it's like 2 wicked desserts. There's desserts in the book, but the desserts aren't attached to the murder. And there's 2 desserts recipes in it too. So we kind of worked that way with it. So we worked on a, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a witch thing or a witchcraft thing or a, magic thing, and then a food thing. But I think we went away from it in book 4. So it's just whatever happens with the titles. It's just, they're just titles. So I struggle with titles. Like I said, sometimes they're there and they're there from day one. And sometimes it's Slay in Character, which is it's a Cat Latimer book, and they go to a ghost town where they're all dressed up in Western garb. So they have those actors that go around and pretend to be old time Western people. I had no idea what that book was going to be called. And it was my editor's assistant who named it. And she just came up with it. It's just like, yeah, that would work. That's totally right. Thanks. So.
Not to interrupt, Lynn, I just wanted to add real quick that sometimes for me, the title comes first and it kind of gives me the idea for the book. That might sound weird, but I really like it when it has to do with the mystery and it fits, because sometimes titles don't fit with the book, but it's fun.
Well, it being fun is actually the perfect note to end on. Lynn, Amita, and Catherine, this has been such a fun evening. I've really enjoyed myself tremendously, and I appreciate you all taking the time to talk to us. And Amita, you staying up so late tonight to talk to us. I know it's quite late in the UK. Audience, thank you all for being here. You can join us at future Northshire virtual events, which you can find all on our website, northshire.com. And you can also find the wonderful books by these 3 authors all on our website. And in both Northshire bookstore locations in Saratoga Springs, New York, and Manchester Center, Vermont. Thank you all so much for being here, and have a lovely night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all.